Hey, Austinites, did you know that plastic bags and styrofoam cannot be recycled in your blue cart or dumpster? And they can damage recycling equipment, injure workers, and end up in landfills. Now, the good news is that there are easy ways to recycle these items correctly right here in Austin. And recycling the right way just means the material will be used again and won't end up in landfills. Visit austintexas.gov/recycling or download the Austin Recycle app to learn more and connect to your local recycling options. If you own a rental property in Austin, listen up. Being a landlord can feel like a second job, except the meetings are maintenance requests and they usually happen on Saturday morning. Put your rentals on autopilot with TurboTenant. TurboTenant helps you find and place a qualified tenant by handling the listings, showings, and screening. So all you have to do is review and approve the applicant, and you don't pay anything until a tenant is placed. Once your tenant is in place, TurboTenant can also handle rent collection, maintenance coordination, and the day-to-day management. Learn more at turbotenant.com/citycast.
This is Your City Could Be Better, because it could be. I'm David Plotz. If you love your city and still complain about it, you're in the right place.
My name is Jacoby Cochran, and I'm the host of CityCast Chicago. This week, I'm filling in for CityCast CEO David Plotz, but we're still headed to his hometown of Washington, D.C. Last week, D.C. Council passed emergency legislation requiring local police to release body cam footage of incidents involving federal forces they patrol with and to collect the names of federal officers who make arrests. It's a big shift in their local policy, partially motivated by the fact that local cops, that's the Metropolitan Police Department, have essentially damaged their reputation by patrolling with the feds. I'm here to talk about all of this with Michael Schaefer, co-host and executive editor of CityCast DC. Mike, welcome to Your City Could Be Better.
Hey, Jacoby, how's it going?
I'm doing well, man. I'm glad to make time to be here with you today. Can you tell me more about what's in these two bills and how they ended up before the council? I know it has been a long saga dealing with the feds over the last, 8 months?
Right. So what's in the bills is, like you said, one of them says that if local cops, the Metropolitan Police Department, MPD, if they are with federal agents and the federal agents do a number of things that trigger the release of body cam footage, that is, use deadly force, use violence, etc., the local police will release that footage in the same way as if it was one of their own people doing it. And the other thing is, if the local cops are with federal agents and the federal agents engage in violence or do some kind of arrest action, they will release the names, as they would in an ordinary case when it was a city cop. The backstory here, as you know, is that last summer, the president described DC as a crime-ridden hellhole, ordered a takeover of the local police force, which under the law, because DC is not a state and it's not sovereign in the same way, under the law, they can do that. And even after that ended, there has been a sort of glut of federal forces on our streets. This is true in a lot of big cities.
We've experienced the same rhetoric, the same attacks, the same spate of federal agents. We've seen kidnappings, our neighborhoods, tear gas, right? This scene has played out time and time again across the country.
And again, these feds are allowed to do things that in most big cities, I don't know about Chicago, but I suspect so, the local government has forbidden its own police force from doing. Or they don't have to do things that local government requires its police force to do. Like they can wear masks. Our cops can't wear masks, that kind of thing. So the city in Washington, unlike any other city, it kind of has a particularly bad hand to play. So the mayor of Washington has had to play nice with Trump because she is trying to hold on to what limited democracy we have now. She had a lousy set of hands.
She suggested repealing sanctuary city policies.
She's downplayed that. Yep.
She's pushed back against these bills.
Yep. And she has decided that the way to keep things from getting worse is to give on a bunch of things. They tore up the Black Lives Matter mural in the middle of 16th Street by the White House because the Trump people didn't like it. They were claiming that the murals on the street are dangerous for driving, but we know that wasn't the real reason.
Right.
So I kind of feel for her. She's in a tough spot. But in this case, we have a unanimous majority in the DC Council who voted for these bills. Despite the mayors being against them, she says, well, that's up to Congress to legislate how federal forces behave. That is surely true, but the bill wasn't actually about what federal agencies do. It was about what the city cops do with their body cam footage. That was her out loud argument. We know that the real thinking was, we don't want to give these people cause to come in and take away home rule, to come in and actually take over day-to-day government of the city that is a very blue city. So in this case, though, the council, which has a bunch of difference of opinion on a lot of law enforcement questions, is unanimous, and I think for very good reason. Like, whatever you think about what the rules of engagement between police and communities should be, and whatever you think about what role law enforcement ought to have in the enforcement of immigration laws, Washington and a lot of big cities in the country have done a lot of work to try to rebuild trust between their police and their communities. Washington's police department is still a police department, and there's all kinds of historic issues of trust, but it's a pretty good police department as these things go. This is not some Ferguson, Missouri, shake everybody down kind of force. And they feel like they've done a lot of work to try to keep it that way. And the fact that the mayor has permitted, under duress, the local police to go around town with some of the federal agencies, they think has damaged that a lot. Who local cops that I've talked to view as a bunch of yahoos who have no training like they do and who are a lesser law enforcement agency than they are.
Yeah. The collaboration between federal forces and law enforcement has clearly caused tension in Chicago and other cities, especially with these recent ICE operations around the country we've seen. How has that played out in DC, this collaboration between the two? Because we have concerns that if police are there being sent, whether by the governor or the city, to sort of protect protesters, they end up, getting allegations of abuse against protesters themselves. And so we have major questions about the relationship between our local police and federal agents during these operations. What does that look like in your city?
I mean, it's like there's a whole alphabet soup of different federal agencies that are out patrolling. There's the Homeland Security has its own thing. There's ICE. FBI has some people that we've just learned that the entire class of people, rookies, just getting out of the FBI Academy in Quantico, is being sent up here to do street patrols. You know who really doesn't like that? The FBI, because these guys think of themselves as, we're not flat-foot street cops and we're not trained for that. And here we are. The fear on the part of everybody, the fear on the part of the local police is that, on one of these days in DC where it's like 103 degrees in the summer and like someone mouths off and someone does something stupid and someone else does something stupid, that our police are fairly well trained to de-escalate. But that is not part of the training for a lot of these federal agencies. They're not trained in chaotic situations. They certainly don't come from or frequently work in the communities they're being policed. So the worry is that one of these feds will just up and get someone killed, and that it will then damage, in addition to the tragedy of that it'll then damage the city's own ability to police itself sort of going forward.
In our city, we have a deep history of police abuse, police torture, police murder. There was a police involved shooting just a few days ago from the time we're recording this. As someone who lives in DC, what's your sense of how people feel about local police right now? Do they trust them? And I really mean that sort of across the city.
Look, I think it's a police department, and that brings with it all kinds of historic and ongoing issues. As police departments go, I think ours is pretty good. We haven't had a lot of horrific incidents that enrage communities. That we've had some. Our police department has a higher percentage of Black officers than the city population in general. It's about a quarter women. None of these are dispositive, but this is the result of some work. And their training and their codes of conduct are the result of some work. So I think even people who are in favor of a more aggressive policing than a lot of the council would be, don't want to see that work undone by the behavior of the feds that they have agreed to walk around town with. And one of the ways they think they will sort of create some distance is to release body cam footage that would make clear who did what in these circumstances. And maybe it'd make clear that some of the cops who are going around with the feds are not behaving in a way that's either honorable or comporting with the wishes of the citizens of the city.
Yeah. I know there's some newly released body cam footage I saw from NBC that really highlights this sense of people feeling betrayed by DC police, like you're saying, going backwards on some of these, some of their initiatives. This was from last spring when local police and federal officers took over the U.S. Institute of Peace. Can you tell me more about what happened there?
All right. So the U.S. Institute of Peace is a congressionally mandated organization that hosts, apparently, international negotiations. Trump went in and decided he was going to fire everybody. There was some question about whether that was legal. The people he was firing said, "We're not leaving. This is a quasi-independent thing. This is a very common pattern." They refused to leave the building. The Doge people showed up, wanted to get in the building, and the local police came along. The local police, it was not clear whether these people who wanted to get in had the right to. This was still being hashed out in court. But the local police basically acted on behalf of the Doge people. And, there's video of them picking the locks. And there's video of them saying to the Institute of Peace existing leadership, "Oh, we're here to help you." When in fact, it was clear from the video that they had been coordinating with the Doge people about how to get in. That's not quite the same as their behavior out patrolling with ICE, because there was no ICE. The Metropolitan Police Department was the only law enforcement there. But in that case, the cops buddied up to the representatives of the Trump administration. Now, it's not clear to me from those videos whether that was out of agreement with Trump policies or out of they thought that's what they were supposed to be doing. It was a mess, but it was a pretty dishonorable behavior by the police.
Hey y'all, it's Eva Ruth. Austin news has really been keeping me busy lately, but the one thing that's helped me keep my cool is my Doer jeans. I'm not kidding. They're comfortable enough to sit on the floor of a packed press conference, and they look polished enough to meet up for dinner downtown when the work is done. They're truly high-quality denim. Plus, these jeans are antimicrobial, and they're made from these Coolmax fibers that help regulate your temperature, literally keeping you cool. Doers denim and lifestyle apparel is made for us to move freely without sacrificing comfort or style. So if you don't have your own pair of Doers yet, now is the time. Check out shopdoer.com/CCAustin and you'll get 15% off of your first order. That's shopdoer.com/CCAustin.
Hey y'all, so you may have noticed it's warming up outside, and pretty soon it'll be time to run the AC. And if you're like me, you are not looking forward to that summertime energy bill. Well, why not start thinking about how to make your home more energy efficient right now? Window Nation can replace your old or builder-grade windows with custom-built, high-quality windows at a great price. And right now, the more you buy, the more savings you can enjoy, like up to 50% off all window styles. And in case you've forgotten, they have over 1,500 styles and colors to choose from. And if 50% is just not enough to convince you, they have finance options, including $0 down and payments as little as $199 a month. Window Nation has a 96% customer satisfaction rating, and there's a lifetime warranty on all of their windows. So you can relax knowing your home is protected far into the future. So schedule a fast, free estimate now at windownation.com.
Let's talk about body cameras some more. What are the current rules for MPD when it comes to the use of body cameras and the release of footage after instances of deadly force?
So it's a fairly transparent system. I gather this is pretty standard in places that have some kind of transparency. If there is a number of kind of triggering things, including the use of deadly force, they have to, within 5 days, release the body cam video. And then I, as a citizen, have the right to go get any body cam footage of myself that may have been recorded in an encounter with police, even if it was a totally anodyne kind of interaction.
5 days is kind of blowing my mind. In Chicago, it's
Yeah.
60, and that goes through a civilian board, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a much longer process. Could be
Well,
up to
right.
90 days or even longer.
And the argument against it always is that body cam footage doesn't tell the whole story.
Mhm.
True. And it can rile up emotions at perilous times. True. But, we're in a moment where there's a lot of evidence out there. And as journalists, I think we should always want more information out there for people. And there's plenty of stuff that can already rile people up. If it's a public confrontation in a public place, there's probably someone with their cell phone camera out already. The body cam footage from the cops is just one more input, and I think it's a good input.
Yeah, we've seen in our city. I mean, I have a ton of skepticism around the broad claims of what the potential of body cams is, but we have direct example in our city of how it has led to action in our city, not only mobilizing community members, it's led to government officials being pushed out, it's led to police chiefs being pushed out. We've seen Marimar Martinez shot 5 times, and federal agents lie about what took place there. Luckily, body cam footage did ultimately come out that ultimately dispelled that narrative after a judge allowed it to be released. There was Silverio Villegas Gonzalez, who was shot and killed out in Franklin Park. And again, once body cam footage came out, it pushed back against the narrative that federal agents were spinning. But to your point, do I think it has led to stemming police abuse in our city? The data pushes back against that.
Right.
We have ongoing concerns about changing policy around police being allowed to turn their body cam footage off directly after an incident when working with a supervisor. And so there are going to be these questions, but I want to know, how successful do you think body cameras have actually been in increasing transparency and accountability?
I guess I would just say, look at who's against the release of body cam footage, particularly in the case of the feds. Why do they want their behavior to not be public? And why should any citizen want any piece of data that's gathered by the government that is not private? And there are various privacy exceptions to the releases. Why would any citizen want any incident like that not to be made public? I don't have any illusion that it provides a perfect record of exactly what was happening, but I think it's better than not having it.
Going back to these bills, what's the timeline for these changes taking effect?
Yeah. So it's interesting. They introduced it as so-called emergency legislation, which means it sort of moves a little bit faster through the council. People always get excited by that name because they think it means there's an emergency, but it's just it's a technical term for that. But one of the things that means is in DC, all of the laws here can be vetoed by Congress, and they have 30 days after passage for Congress to disapprove them. Emergency legislation can be an exception. So they're trying to push it in without giving the Congress, run by Trump allies, a chance to whack it.
Thinking about these emergency orders that have been passed through the council, I'm thinking back to 2023 when a public safety emergency bill was put through that was a watered down version, but was essentially supported by the mayor. This one that the mayor didn't support. How has this tightrope that the mayor walked over the last few years impacted their legacy in the city? And also, has that had any impact, do you think, on their decision to not run for a 4th term?
Look, the mayor of Washington is a kind of a centrist in her orientation. And she has, for a lot of her term, really butted heads with a more progressive bloc in the council. After COVID, crime in Washington spiked, as it did in many other cities. It took a little longer to come back down, although it now has. And there was a move in the council to push through some changes that undid some of the 2020 reforms. Bowser has, I think, kind of won her fight with the progressive bloc in the council. I think the spike in crime, in the sense that there were people in the council who kind of carried themselves with an attitude that if you're complaining about the safety in your neighborhood, you're a Karen. That didn't help the progressive bloc, particularly since the sort of angriest neighborhoods about the spike in crime were working class Black neighborhoods. So look, there is always going to be a tension in a city like Washington, where it has very poor neighborhoods and it has a lot of college graduates. And it sort of scrambles the politics a little bit because some of the most progressive people in local politics are themselves like their base is the college graduates, not the sort of historic Black communities. So, Bowser has never been super popular, but she's always gotten 50% plus one. And like serving 3 terms ain't nothing, particularly when those terms include like Trump, COVID, and Trump again.
Mm-hmm. How else are people in your city dealing with the heavy federal law enforcement presence and the tensions with, between local and federal agents?
I think the incidents have tamped down. There was a real surge of like horrific ICE arrests when, people were being dragged out of contractor vans and so on. And a lot of people taping it from the sidewalk. The forces that Trump brought in, the National Guard, a lot of them are kind of in the tourist areas and they look kind of bored. And they're, a bunch of very young people from red states who've never been here before. And I remember being at right when it first started, I spent a day just going around town looking at them and interviewing and so on. And I was at the Lincoln Memorial and it was full of National Guard, which is like, if you're from DC, like you're not gonna get mugged at the Lincoln Memorial, right? There's like, no matter good times, bad times, it's not a place that pickpockets hang out. And of course, like these kids wanted to be there because they were playing tourist. And I don't blame them. Like if I was a 19-year-old National Guard person and they were like, you got to go to DC for 6 weeks, I would go see the Lincoln Memorial too. But the point is just to say it has chilled. I think people are offended on a sort of visceral level that, listen, this is our city. We are American citizens. We should have the right to decide how our city is being policed, where it's being policed, and the people doing the policing should answer to us as voters. And because of DC's unique status, that is particularly untrue here. And I think that upsets people on a sort of philosophical level. Mm-hmm. There's been less going on the streets that upsets people on a practical level in the last, 5 months.
What do you think listeners can take away from this conversation today to make their own cities better?
Well, I think that this question of like what cities do, what local communities do when the feds engage in law enforcement has taken on a whole new meaning in the Trump era. And, it puts local authorities in a bind, no matter where. And the ones in DC have a harder time with that bind because of their legal status. But are the local police in a regular city out there on behalf of the citizens? Are they there as law enforcement alongside the feds? What are they doing there? And how will the actions of the feds affect them? It's a question for all communities. And, look, we've had enough trouble in this country policing ourselves. This adds a further wrinkle of complication. And it's one that I think a lot of local governments probably are and certainly need to think about. Like, how are we going to protect our own ability to do the job from the consequences of behavior of people who don't answer to us?
Hi, I'm David Plotz. I'm the CEO of CityCast, a podcast network that includes this show you're listening to, and also 12 other CityCasts in 12 other cities. And each one knows their city as well as your local team knows yours. So isn't it time we connected them? Don't you want to know how they're tackling their bike lane problems and housing challenges and sidewalk dog poop crises? That's why I'm hosting a new podcast called Your City Could Be Better. Because it could be. Every week, I'll chat with a different host in our CityCast network about what their cities are doing right and wrong, the weird things they're trying, and the surprising successes, so that we can all learn how to make our cities a little bit better. Listen to Your City Could Be Better on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.
Hey, y'all, it's Eva Ruth. I don't know about you, but I feel like this time of year in Austin, the one thing that is consistent is that the weather is constantly changing. Our mornings can be really chilly, so you gotta have your layers, but by the afternoon, you're burning up and peeling these layers off. So the one thing that I'm reaching for constantly is my Doer Shacket. That's right, a shirt jacket. It's a perfect neutral color, and it's made from this super high quality fabric that is so comfortable and cozy. And their clothing is really versatile. You can wear this jacket dressed up, dressed down, dressed all around. Dewar's denim and lifestyle apparel is made for us to move freely without sacrificing comfort or style. And that sounds perfect for us Austinites. So if you don't have your own Dewar's yet, now is the time to check them out. Go to shopdewar.com/CC Austin and you'll get 15% off of your first order. That's shopdewar.com/CC Austin.
Okay, let's move on to this week's Word on the Street segment, and it's all about etiquette when you're on public transit. Mike, we are always having this conversation in Chicago about, if people are smoking on the train, eating on the train, right, playing loud music. And so I want to get your thoughts on that last one in particular, because I imagine my opinions are a little different than others. I want to know how you feel when people are playing their music on the train out loud. Is that something that's accepted in D.C.? Some people look down on?
All right. So in Washington, D.C., our metro is a very weird, silent place. And, it was built in the 60s. At the time, the idea was the New York subway was a hellhole. I don't agree with that, but that's what they thought. And the architecture and everything was designed to sort of quiet human behavior, to chill people out, to avoid, they even measured how far the platforms were from the walls. That was how far a graffiti can could spray, to avoid chaos. And it worked. So the sort of basic code of behavior in DC metro subways is of a rather quiet, chill kind of behavior. Buses are a little bit more rowdy.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because most of ours is we have some lines that run underground, but so much of ours are outside elevated. It's just a part of the sort of city soundscape. Right. And so it feels like a much more chaotic experience just being on the platform, even if you're up there by yourself, because maybe you're in the middle of a neighborhood or in the middle of downtown, whatever the case may be. So it's interesting hearing you all describe that way.
But either way, when you walk into a bus or in the metro, there's a sign that says, no smoking, no eating, no drinking, no loud music. And that is the way I see it. There's a code, right? There's both the legal code. If you bought a ticket, you agreed to these rules and you should live them. And there's also sort of the code of society. And I think with the loud music, this is obviously not a thing that you would want to sick your police on. If you were running a public transit agency, it's not going to be your highest priority. If it is, you're either very lucky or very dumb. But I think right now, by 2026, in an age of ubiquitous earbuds, if you see someone who is playing their phone really loud on the subway, you kind of know this is a person who's got some issues with boundaries. I don't think they're trying to entertain the world or anything like that. I think it's a thing that we recognize as socially unusual, norm-breaking behavior. And I think it is human nature when you see someone who is engaging in a boundary-shattering behavior to wonder, what other boundaries might this person shatter? And then you start thinking about your physical safety and the safety of the space you're in. So these may be irrational. These may be irrational thoughts.
That never crosses my mind. I'm listening to your perspective. For me, to not to ignore how other people experience that moment, but 90% of the time I've experienced loud music on the train, I have overwhelmingly enjoyed the music that's been played. The mix of soul music, rap music, R&B. It makes me wonder if the city should just invest in putting a playlist on the train that people can enjoy while they're riding. And if that might be a solution to the experience, I think people are still going to play loud music. I'm more about minding my business, and I usually let people be. But again, I have had so many experiences where I have been sitting there dancing to the music. I have paused my own music to listen to. Some people still got a full radio out there when they're on the train. And so I agree with you. I do, I won't be completely dismissive, right? There are some thoughts around why are you doing this? Why you ain't even got no cord headphones on you?
Why don't you do it? If you like it so much.
Why don't I play music on the train?
Yeah, why don't you play loud music? You probably got good taste.
I do, but I'm blowing it right into my own ears. I pay too much money for my headphones.
But that's what I mean. It's like, why don't you want to blow into everyone else's ears? Share the joy.
Mostly because I'm selfish. I
Okay.
want to keep my playlist to myself. I like to gatekeep the music that I'm listening to. And I appreciate when there is that rare experience where someone isn't gatekeeping, where they are breaking that norm. I understand it disrupts people's commute and does make some people wonder how far. But again, more times than not, it's one person or even a group of people who seem to be to themselves and more or less are breaking the norm to break the monotony of whatever their day-to-day experience is. And is more times than not, it doesn't seem to be concerning the people around them. It's actually very dismissive of the people around them versus sort of a larger expression of crossing those boundaries. But I understand it's not always the case.
I think you are statistically right about more often than not. But also, like, I don't know, like, if you come in a place that says no eating, you shouldn't eat. Like, I know sometimes you've got to, and
I'd be
sometimes it's
hungry
an
on the
emergency.
train. I'd be hungry on the train.
But, you know, you're like, I don't know. I just feel like you should follow rules unless the rules are like unjust, in which case you should consciously and intentionally break them and work to have them changed.
Mm-hmm. I hear that last part. It's a forever debate on public etiquette on the transit system. I appreciate you making time today. Both of our first times on Your City Could Be Better. Mike Schaefer is the co-host and executive editor of CityCast DC.
Thank you for having me, Jacoby.
Listen to Mike and his team on the CityCast DC podcast. You can find it wherever you get your podcast. You can also find CityCast Chicago, where you're going to find me and our entire team every weekday morning. That's all for today's episode of Your City Could Be Better. I'm Jacoby Cochran. Our producers were Lizzie Goldsmith, Priyanka Tilve, Simone Alicea, Annie Reese, and Mike Schaefer. Our music is by Carl Christensen. If you're enjoying the show, please share us with your friends and family, rate and leave a review wherever you get your podcast. David Plotz will be back in the host chair next week with another conversation about how your city could be better. Peace.